Have you been feeling poor lately? Well, let me tell you, you are not imagining things. It has actually never been more tough to make it in America right now. So, when we look at the Great Depression, the average inflation adjusted income was $88,000. The average inflation adjusted income was $88,000. The current average income in the US is $74,000. So, how were people doing it in the Great Depression? Well, obviously, living standards were lower. I'm not saying life was better during that time period, but relative to others, people were making more money in the Great Depression than they are right now. And when we look at home affordability, homes have never been less affordable than they are right now. So an average home is roughly 7.3 times the annual income for the average person. This is less affordable than it was in 2008. So there's massive issues right now. I think we're going through what some would refer to as a silent depression. It's what I've heard from a lot of people. I think that kind of makes sense because everyone's struggling right now, but you don't really hear about it, right? Everyone always talks about, how the stock market's doing. But when you take a look at how the average person is doing, they're getting their ass kicked. And there there's hard workers in the US. I don't want to hear, oh, no one wants to work anymore. That's why the media. No. No, people still work hard. They're just getting less for their work, quite simply. And I'm not saying that there isn't a way out of this. There's obviously a way out of it, and there's people making millions of dollars every day, regardless of the economic situation. But it's never been harder to do something like that than it is right now. So let's just take a look at some of the cost of living numbers. So from 2000 to 2022, just going to cover from kind of the dot-com bubble to now, incomes have risen 76%. So the average income in 2000 was roughly 42 grand. The average income right now, as I said, was 42.5. So excuse me, 74.5. So 74,000 roughly. That is a 77% increase since 2000. And the government will tell you that inflation has only been 70% from 2000 to 2022. So the real income gain has been 7% according to the government. But I don't really necessarily think that number is indicative of the true living costs in America, right? So we see so many times CPI being kind of talked about as CPI X food, energy, housing, everything that you would need is actually coming down. That's what a lot of market pundits say, but in reality, it's really hard to live right now, and inflation is still running rampant. So that's what the government says. That's from census.gov, that inflation from 2000 on has been 70%. But when we take a look at housing and food and the cost of education, college, for example, it's pretty high. So housing costs since 2000 have risen 160%. So the average cost in the US for a house was roughly $205,000 in 2000. Now it is $513,000 to buy a new house. That's a 160% increase in the price of owning a home, really, right? So that has increased by 160%. Food, on the other hand, has increased 62% over the past 20 years. So food inflation been crazy, right? I mean, you see it every day, right? I mean, I don't have to explain to an average person that the price of food is going up. You see it in your life, right? So this is unfortunate, and it really sucks. The average cost of college has gone up drastically as well. So we see 128% increase in the cost of college, the cost of higher education. It doesn't really, unfortunately, you're seeing the incomes coming out of college not really be that high either. So it's really never been less worth it, if you will, to go to college. So the average cost of college in 2000 was roughly 21 grand. The average cost of college in 2023, this is just for 1 year. The average cost of college in 2023 is roughly 48,000. I'm using private institutions, so obviously if you go to state school, these numbers will be lower, but the increases are roughly the same. So that's 128% increase. So think about that. I mean, you're asking someone who's paying almost 200,000 to get a college education, come out, be in all that debt, and then come out to what, 70 grand a year, 60 grand a year, 60 grand a year. When you're looking at housing prices at 513,000 to own a home, that's unsustainable. That's not reachable. That's not doable for someone making 60, 70 grand a year. So it is not your father's economy. The housing market has been insane, 160% increase over the past 20 years. And like I said, it's never been less affordable to own a home. And, just want to go back to this 1930s example, 1929. So in 1929, which is when this 88,000 average income, inflation adjusted, was actually taking place, the tax rate for the lowest tax bracket was 1.5%. So that's not much, right? 1.5% on your money for the average tax bracket. If you were making 88 grand inflation adjusted, which was roughly 4 grand, you would be paying 3% in tax. Well, let's look at it today. So the lowest tax bracket is 10%. And if you're making 88 grand, you're paying 22%. It almost seems like there's a correlation between taxes and income, meaning that the less you tax people, the more their net income number goes up. So even before taxes, right? And that just goes back to the logic of if there's less tax in the system, there's more money for businesses to pay its employees, so salaries are higher. That's typically how that works. So it's very clear to me that taxes need to be dropped. And I understand people are going to hate to hear that. And I'm really speaking more from a perspective of the individual consumer, right? The individual person within the US, rather than I'm speaking to, the debt load and all that stuff. I understand we have a really crazy debt and something needs to be done. In my eyes, I would say, curbing fiscal spending is kind of the first way to do it. Some people would say, increasing taxes. So we can see here that even the top tax rate has gone up a lot. So the top tax rate right now is 37%. In 1929, it was 25%. So yes, the rich are paying more, but most folks, which are not rich, on the bottom end of the income spectrum, are paying more as well. So really, I would argue that taxes need to be dropped, at least for 100 grand and lower, maybe even for the upper price or tax brackets, maybe for even the 95 to 182. I really do think that these kind of 4 bottom tax brackets, we need to see some reduction in taxes if we ever want to get back to a situation where the individual could actually pay for things, right? I mean, you're talking about the lowest tax bracket was 1.5% in 1929. Now it's 10%. What has changed so much? Why? I don't think that makes any sense. I think it's hurting individuals when you charge people who make under 10 grand a year 10 times than what they were charged in 1929. Fuck that. No, screw that. Excuse my language. I never curse on this channel, but this pisses me off, man. It really does. So look, I kind of went a ton of different ways here, but people are hurting right now. We're in what I believe, I've heard coined from multiple other creators, is the silent depression. I think it fits really well. when you look at all the numbers, the consumer is effed. It has never been more. It's never been harder to buy a home. It's never been harder to go to college. It's never been harder to feed yourself. Things are tough right now, and I know the stock market isn't showing it. I know the GDP number is still solid. I get all that, but it's about what you make relative to what you spend. And when you look at what you're spending, those prices have gone up drastically more than your personal incomes, what you make, right? So I think the key to kind of going back to how things were would be to move the tax rates lower, especially for those in kind of the bottom 4 tax brackets. So taxes were lower in 1929. I think that's likely why incomes were higher. So with that being said, I hate giving videos like this. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. If you guys know, I typically, I really just cover stocks on this channel. But this was something I really feel like I had to make a video about, show you some numbers, and just so you know that you're not crazy. It's hard to make it in America right now. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you here next time.